Sir, we can help you walk.
What did you say?
Snow pounds the city. Sawyer, a withdrawn billionaire who uses a wheelchair, keeps to a quiet house. At a flickering light he finds two brothers, a broken drone in one hand, an inhaler in the other. One night of safety becomes a promise he fears he cannot keep. On the table, a small compass waits. If grief set him adrift, can their faith point them all home? The city had gone quiet in the kind of storm that softens every edge. Snow pressed the windows until the glass hummed. Inside the townhouse, Sawyer Hale kept his morning small. Kettle on, mug warmed under a trickle of hot water, 2 pills from a white bottle. He lined the chair parallel to the sink, braked, slid the board to bridge the gap, and transferred with practiced care. The motions were automatic, efficient, almost soundless. He did not look toward the closed door at the end of the hall. The room behind it still held the scent of a lavender candle and the dress she had not taken to the cleaners. He told himself there was no reason to go in. Not today, not yet. The radiator ticked like an old watch. He filled the mug, breathed steam, and stared at the snow collecting in the corner of the kitchen window, building a white triangle that kept growing. His phone vibrated on the counter and rolled a little, stopping against the sugar jar. A voicemail from Dr. Richards. Calm voice. No pressure. Sawyer, this is just a check-in. I know winter shifts routines. If you want to talk about restarting, even once a week, call me. We can build from where you are. He let the message run to the tiny click at the end and did not press save. The phone returned to silence, face down. Martha had come early the day before, when the wind first rose. She left a casserole with a note under a magnet that said, Monday in a cheerful blue. Heat at 350, 20 minutes, drink water. He touched the paper with a knuckle and left it where it was. He texted her anyway. Thank you for yesterday. Roads are bad. Stay home today. Her reply came quickly. Already home. You too, boss. Doors locked. Extra blankets in the linen closet if power goes. He wheeled to the living room. A shipping crate sat open by the wall, foam stripped back to reveal 4 battery modules the size of suitcases. Micro-grid prototypes. He and Daniel had been piloting them with a clinic 3 hours north, a place where the lines went down when the first branch snapped. He stared at the matte casing and the small green lights that meant each unit was full, ready. The storm would test everything. Call it 10, he said to the room, the words quiet and steady. Board first, clinic second. Saying it out loud helped anchor the hours. He rolled to the window and lifted the blind with his wrist. The street was a tunnel of white. A traffic light glowed unevenly through the drift, the kind of flicker you notice and file away. Someone from the city would handle it. Everything had someone. His eyes drifted to the desk and the top drawer he rarely opened. He opened it anyway. Pens, a rubber band ball, a small brass compass in a cloth pouch, the kind of thing you give as a graduation gift. He set the pouch on the desk and left it closed. The impulse felt like setting a place at the table for a guest who had not come in years. He did not know why it eased his breath, only that it did. The chair moved with the low whir of motors as he backed from the desk. He pivoted toward the hallway. Halfway down, he stopped in front of the closed door. The sound inside his chest changed, a slow hitch, as if a cord had been plucked. He reached for the knob, felt the chill of the metal, then let his hand fall. Not today. He turned, rolled away. In the bathroom, he braced his hands on the counter, lifted for a brief weight shift, and held it, shoulders shaking with the effort. 10 seconds. 15. He eased back down, and for a moment the mirror showed a man he recognized from before. Then that man slipped, as reflections do, into the person standing there now. He nodded to both. A text from Daniel lit the phone. Trucks chained and loaded. If the highway closes, we stage in the south lot and wait it out. You sleeping at all? Sawyer typed. Enough. Good on the trucks. Keep me posted. Another text arrived, a link to a weather camera upstate. He did not open it. He did not need to see more snow to believe in it. He rolled to the mudroom and looked at the lined boots that used to live by the door, at the jacket with the stitched initials on the inside collar, at the hat with a tiny tear along the brim he had never fixed. He should donate them, he thought, or he should not touch them at all. He settled on leaving them right where they were. He drank the last of his coffee at the back door. Out in the alley, the van sat under a white hood, the windshield a blank screen. The heater would do the work. He was not going anywhere, not in this, not today. The kettle ticked as it cooled. Somewhere outside, a plow blade struck a hidden curb and rang like a bell. He turned back toward the living room. The light at the corner kept flickering in his peripheral vision, a stubborn signal punching through the white. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself he could ignore it. Snow fell harder. The storm had worsened by mid-afternoon. Wind curled through narrow city streets, rattling the glass panes of the Sawyer Hale's adapted SUV as it idled at a red light. Wipers fought the blinding flakes, swiping a rhythm that only deepened the silence inside the vehicle. He was on his way back from a short errand, though he hardly remembered why he had gone out. Maybe to feel motion again, maybe to prove he could. The light refused to change. Sawyer leaned his head against the leather seat, eyes heavy, when movement caught at the corner of his vision. Under a storefront awning, two small figures pressed together against the brick wall. Snow blew sideways across their jackets, wet fabric clinging to thin shoulders. One boy crouched, coughing into a sleeve. The other, slightly taller, pulled him closer, trying to shield him with his own body. Sawyer's chest tightened. Children, 10, maybe younger. The taller one met his gaze through the blur of snowfall. Eyes sharp, cautious, but unyielding. He didn't flinch. He just held on tighter to his brother, as if daring the world to take him away. Sawyer's hand hovered over the turn signal. The light turned green. Cars behind him honked, impatient in the storm. But he didn't move. He flicked on his hazard lights, pulled to the curb, and rolled down the passenger window. "Hey!" His voice came rougher than he meant. "You two need shelter. There's a center on 6th. The taller boy shook his head before he finished. His voice carried through the wind. "They split us there." Sawyer frowned. "What?" "They make brothers go to different rooms, sometimes different houses." His jaw set, too hard for a child. "We stay together." Another cough tore through the younger boy, bending him forward. Sawyer saw the bluish tinge at the boy's lips. The damp inhaler clutched uselessly in one mitten. His stomach sank. The honking behind him grew louder. He ignored it, grabbed his phone, and dialed Morgan. "Problem?" The attorney's voice answered crisply. "I found 2 boys in the storm," Sawyer said, eyes never leaving them. "One's sick. I'm not leaving them here." A pause on the line. "You know the rules." "You can't just—" "I'm not making decisions alone," Sawyer cut in. "I'm asking you to guide me. What can I do for one night? Safely, legally." Another silence, then Morgan's voice softened slightly. "All right. Health and safety come first. If you take them home, document everything. I'll call it in first thing tomorrow." Sawyer nodded, exhaling. He ended the call and opened the passenger door. Snow swirled in, stinging his cheeks. "I can give you warmth, food, just for tonight," he said, steady but not commanding. "No one separates you without a judge's order. You have my word." The taller boy hesitated, scanning Sawyer's wheelchair. His tailored coat, the leather interior of the SUV. Distrust battled desperation in his eyes. Finally, he whispered, "We'll leave in the morning?" Sawyer met his gaze squarely. "Yes. Tomorrow, we figure it out. Tonight, you're safe." The boy pulled his brother upright and helped him climb into the back seat. The younger boy's breath came ragged, wheezing through the inhaler. Sawyer handed back the bag of takeout he'd barely touched. The smell of warm soup filled the cabin. "Eat," Sawyer said quietly. "Then we'll get you dry." The taller boy, Max, Sawyer would learn soon, nodded once, still studying him. The younger, Leo, clutched the carton with trembling hands, eyes wide with hunger and relief. As Sawyer pulled back into traffic, snow thick around them, he felt something stir. For the first time in months, the silence inside him wasn't empty. It was breaking. The garage door rumbled shut behind them, shutting out the roar of the storm. Inside the SUV, the heater hummed, but the boys still shivered. Sawyer turned off the ignition and sat for a beat, steadying his breath. He wasn't used to anyone else in the house, let alone two half-frozen children. He wheeled around to face them. "Names?" The taller boy's chin lifted. "Max." He kept one arm around his brother, steady, protective. "He's Leo." Leo coughed again, clutching his inhaler, his small shoulders trembling. Sawyer studied him carefully. "How long since you've had a refill for that?" Max frowned. "It's old. Still works. Sometimes." Sawyer tapped his phone, texting Morgan. "Two boys. Max, Leo. Asthma medication old. Advice?" The reply came within seconds. "Call pediatric urgent care. Document. Provide food, dry clothes, safe sleep. I'll alert social services tomorrow morning. Don't promise anything permanent." Sawyer slipped the phone back in his pocket. "All right," he said gently. "Here's the deal. Tonight you'll stay here. You'll eat, get dry, rest. Tomorrow, we'll let the right people know and figure it out together. Fair?" Max hesitated, suspicion written across his young face. "Together," he repeated. Sawyer nodded. "Together, but only one night for now." He led them inside through the mudroom. Martha had left a stack of towels on the bench, anticipating the storm. Sawyer motioned with his chin. "Use those. Shoes off." Max obeyed slowly, still watching him like a hawk. Leo wobbled, nearly stumbling as he tugged at his soaked sneakers. Sawyer resisted the urge to help. He remembered what pride looked like at 10. Instead, he pushed into the kitchen, switched on the warm overhead light, and set the soup on the counter. "Wash up, then food," he said. His tone was firmer now, the one he used in boardrooms. Oddly, it seemed to reassure Max, who guided Leo to the sink. Within minutes, the boys sat at the table, wrapped in oversized towels, steam rising from their bowls. Max ate carefully, sparingly, as though rationing each bite. Leo devoured spoonfuls with shaky hands. Martha appeared then, snow dusting her coat. She paused in the doorway, eyes widening. "Sawyer?" He nodded once. "Long story. One night only." Her gaze softened instantly. She crossed to the table, smoothing Leo's damp hair with a gentle hand. "Poor lambs. I'll set up the guest room." Sawyer almost said not to fuss, but something in the way Leo leaned into her touch stopped him. Martha bustled off without further explanation, already planning blankets and pajamas. When the boys finished eating, Max pulled a folded paper from his pocket. It was damp, but the crayon lines were clear. 3 figures, standing in front of a house. 2 small, 1 tall. Max placed it carefully on the table, watching Sawyer's reaction. "Leo drew it," Max said quietly. "He draws us with someone else. So we're not alone." Sawyer studied the picture. The tall figure wore a jacket, square at the shoulders. His throat tightened unexpectedly. He laid the drawing back down, meeting Max's eyes. "It's good work," he said softly. "Really good." Martha returned with pajamas patterned in stars. "These will do," she said, handing them over. Leo's eyelids drooped, exhaustion winning. Sawyer cleared his throat. "Bath, then sleep. Tomorrow, Morgan will help me figure next steps." Max's jaw tensed. "They'll try to split us again." Sawyer met his stare, steady and calm. "I won't let anyone make decisions in the dark. Tonight, you're safe. Tomorrow, we'll face it together. That's the promise." For the first time, Max's shoulders eased slightly. He guided Leo down the hall toward the guest room, where Martha waited. Sawyer wheeled back into the kitchen, the crayon drawing still on the table. His eyes lingered on it, on the way the 3 figures held hands. He hadn't expected the weight of two small boys to feel like a kind of light. Snow pressed against the windows, relentless. But inside, the house no longer felt so empty. Morning came slow, a gray hush behind the curtains. Sawyer rolled into the kitchen, the wheels of his chair whispering on the hardwood. For once, the house wasn't silent. Laughter, quick, hushed, almost guilty, floated from the guest room. He paused at the doorway, listening. Martha was there already, placing folded laundry on the dresser. Leo sat cross-legged on the bed, pencil in hand, sketchbook balanced on his knees. Max stood by the window, a small plastic drone in his hands, one wing broken clean off. Sawyer cleared his throat gently. "Morning?" Leo looked up, startled, then offered the drawing with a shy smile. He'd sketched 3 stick figures under a roof, snowflakes falling all around them. Beneath, in shaky letters, "Safe here." Sawyer took the page, his throat tightening. "You drew this last night?" Leo nodded. "Couldn't sleep. Sometimes it helps." Martha smoothed Leo's hair, her voice soft. "He's an artist, this one." Sawyer traced the lines with a finger. "You've got a good eye." Max stepped closer, clutching the broken drone. His eyes, sharp and wary, never left Sawyer's face. "Can you fix things?" Sawyer tilted his head. "Depends on the thing." Max held out the drone, its bent blade rattling loose. "I tried. Can't get it right." Sawyer studied it. "Where'd you learn about drones?" "Library books. And YouTube, when we still had Wi-Fi." Max's voice carried more pride than complaint. "It flew once. Leo laughed so hard when it buzzed around the kitchen." Sawyer handed it back carefully. "I'm no mechanic, but I know someone who can look at it. We'll see." Max's jaw set, as though bracing for disappointment. Leo tugged at his brother's sleeve. "It's okay, Max." He listened. The words caught Sawyer off guard. He listened. He realized how rare it must have been for adults to truly hear them. Martha moved to the door. "Breakfast is ready. Eat before it gets cold." At the table, Sawyer watched the boys eat toast and eggs like they hadn't seen a steady meal in weeks. Max chewed with quiet determination, still scanning the room like it might vanish. Leo drew on a napkin between bites, a crooked little heart next to a tall figure in a chair. Sawyer found himself asking, "Your mom, she drew too?" Leo shook his head. "She sang, all the time." His eyes softened with memory. "But when she got sick, the house was too quiet." Max looked down, shoulders tightening. "Relatives tried to take us, said they'd split us. We ran before they could." The room grew still. Sawyer rested a hand on the table. "That must have been hard." Max met his eyes, defiant. "We don't need pity. We just need each other." Sawyer nodded slowly. "I understand." He didn't offer sympathy, just the recognition of truth. Martha returned with mugs of cocoa. "Boys, after breakfast, showers. Then you rest. Doctor's orders." "Doctor?" Max frowned. Sawyer raised his phone. "Morgan arranged a pediatric check. Just routine, nothing scary. We'll make sure Leo's asthma gets the right medicine." Max's stare lingered, weighing trust against fear. Finally, he nodded. "As long as I'm there." "You will be," Sawyer promised. Leo slid the napkin drawing across the table toward him. "Keep it, for luck." Sawyer folded it carefully, tucking it into his shirt pocket. "Thank you." As the boys finished eating, Sawyer glanced at the broken drone resting on the counter and at the drawing folded near his heart. 2 small tokens, fragile yet stubborn, already carrying weight he hadn't expected. The snow outside still fell in heavy sheets, but inside, something had shifted. He wasn't just housing strangers. He was hearing them, seeing them, and they, in turn, were seeing him, not as the man in the chair, but simply as someone willing to listen. For the first time in months, Sawyer realized, he didn't feel invisible in his own home. The doctor's visit had been short but steadying. Max clung to Leo's side the entire time, answering questions when his brother coughed too hard. The pediatrician confirmed what Sawyer suspected. Leo's inhaler was outdated, dosage too weak. A new prescription was ordered, and Sawyer covered it without a blink. Back home, the boys settled into the den, a small fire crackling in the hearth. Martha had tucked quilts around them, making a makeshift camp on the rug. Sawyer sat nearby, watching the flames, listening to the occasional rasp in Leo's chest as he dozed. Max broke the quiet first. "Our mom, she was tough. Everyone said so." He stared at the fire, jaw tightening. "She worked 2 jobs. Said as long as we stuck together, we'd be fine." Sawyer leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "She sounds like someone who fought hard." "She did," Max said. His voice cracked, but he forced it steady. "But then she got sick. Couldn't breathe right. No one listened at first. By the time they did, it was too late." Leo stirred in his sleep, murmuring. Max gently adjusted the quilt, careful not to wake him. Then he looked at Sawyer. "After she died, they tried to split us up. Said different families, different places. I told Leo we weren't going anywhere without each other." His eyes glistened. "So we ran." Sawyer felt the words cut deep. He swallowed hard, memories rising. Sirens, shattered glass, the night his own life had changed. He rarely spoke of it. Yet, here were 2 boys who had lived through loss too, who carried it with the same stubborn will to endure. "I was in a crash," Sawyer said quietly. "Not long ago, my wife didn't make it. I did, but not the same." He motioned to the chair. "Some days I stopped trying. Thought maybe silence was easier." Max's gaze softened, curious but not pitying. "You still try, though. You came for us." Sawyer nodded slowly. "I couldn't just drive away." For a long moment, only the fire spoke. Then Max said, "Leo doesn't care about the chair. He says it makes you look like a pilot." Sawyer blinked, startled, then chuckled under his breath. "A pilot?" "Yeah," Max said with the faintest smile. "Like you're steering us somewhere." Sawyer glanced at the folded napkin drawing still in his pocket. 3 figures, holding hands. A house. Snow falling, but not burying them. He realized the boys didn't see his chair as a limitation. They saw it as part of him, as natural as the way Max guarded Leo or the way Leo sketched a world where they belonged. Martha entered then with a tray of tea and sandwiches. She caught the look on Sawyer's face and gave a small nod, as if to say, "Keep going. They need this, and maybe you do too." Sawyer poured tea into a cup, the steam curling upward. "You 2 have grit," he said, passing the plate toward Max. "That matters more than most things people brag about." Max took a sandwich for himself, then one for Leo to eat later. "Mom always said, grit beats luck. Guess we're still testing that." Sawyer raised his cup in quiet salute. She was right. Leo stirred again, half awake, mumbling, "Don't split us, Max." His brother squeezed his hand until he settled back to sleep. Sawyer looked into the fire, the shadows painting lines across his face. He thought of the door he never opened, of the lavender candle burned low, of the silence he'd let harden around him. Now, 2 boys had carried their grief into his home, setting it beside his own. It didn't feel heavier. Strangely, it felt like something he could finally share. For the first time in months, Sawyer whispered into the fire, "Maybe silence isn't easier after all." Snow had slowed to a steady fall by the next morning. The house smelled faintly of coffee and toast. Sawyer sat at the kitchen table, turning a small brass compass over in his hands. It was one of the few things he'd kept from the box of his wife's belongings. A gift she'd once left on his desk with a note. "So you never forget how to choose a direction, even when you feel lost." He hadn't touched it in months. Now it lay on the table, the needle quivering as though reminding him that standing still was also a choice. Leo shuffled in, dragging his quilt behind him. His curls stuck up in every direction, and his sketchbook was tucked under his arm. Max followed close, alert as always. Sawyer gestured toward the compass. "Ever seen one of these?" Leo's eyes widened. He set his sketchbook down and leaned in. "Like pirates use?" Sawyer smiled faintly. Something like that. Helps you pick a heading, even when the weather makes everything look the same. Max crossed his arms. We don't need a compass. We just go where we have to. Sawyer studied him. And if you had a choice, where would you point it? Max hesitated, glancing at his brother. Somewhere together, doesn't matter where. Leo tapped the compass face with a finger. Can it point us home? Sawyer's throat tightened. He placed the compass gently into Leo's hands. Maybe it can help us decide what home means now. Martha entered with a plate of scrambled eggs. You're philosophical this morning, she said, her tone warm but edged with curiosity. Sawyer shrugged, though his voice carried weight. Just thinking about direction. Leo perched on a chair, flipping open his sketchbook. He began to draw quickly, tongue peeking between his teeth. Within minutes, he'd sketched the compass itself, 3 small figures around it, arrows pointing forward. He tore the page carefully and pushed it toward Sawyer. So, you don't forget, he said. Sawyer folded the drawing and slipped it into his pocket beside the napkin picture from the night before. 2 small anchors, offered freely. After breakfast, he wheeled into his study. The room was quiet except for the hum of the radiator. He opened his late wife's journal, the one he'd avoided for months. Inside, pressed between pages of lists and half-written thoughts, was her final note. The handwriting tilted slightly, familiar and steady. Presence matters more than perfection. Don't let grief steal your time. Choose us, always. He closed the journal, chest heavy but steadier than before. For the first time, he didn't feel the words as punishment. They felt like guidance, like a hand on his shoulder urging him forward. Max's voice called from the doorway. We'll leave tomorrow, right? You said one night. Sawyer turned. The boy's expression was guarded, daring him to break the promise. Yes, Sawyer said carefully. Tomorrow, Morgan will help me file for emergency placement. That means you'll have a say, and you'll stay together. No tricks. Max blinked, surprised by the honesty. You really mean that? I do. Sawyer rolled closer, lowering his voice. But until then, you're safe here. That compass on the table, let's say we use it together. Pick the heading, together. Max's shoulders eased, just a little. He glanced back at Leo, who was busy humming to himself as he colored. Okay, Max said finally. Together. Sawyer extended his hand. Max stared at it, then slowly placed his own small palm against Sawyer's. A quiet pact, sealed not by words but by the weight of trust beginning to form. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white. Inside, the compass needle settled, pointing north. A reminder that direction wasn't about where you started. It was about where you chose to go next. The next day began with the sharp smell of coffee and the quiet buzz of Sawyer's phone. He wheeled into his study, put Morgan on speaker, and braced himself. Emergency kin-like placement is possible, Morgan said, her tone measured. But it requires immediate filing, medical documentation, and a home inspection. You'll need to demonstrate stability. Sawyer glanced toward the living room, where Max and Leo sat on the rug with their drone parts spread out like puzzle pieces. What happens in the meantime? They stay with you under temporary shelter, legally documented. That protects you and them. Sawyer nodded. File it. Morgan exhaled, relieved. All right, I'll coordinate with social services. Just don't promise the boys more than the law allows. I won't, Sawyer said quietly, though he already felt the weight of promises unsaid. When he returned to the living room, Martha was coaxing Leo into a sweater. The boy's cheeks were pink from the cold draft near the window, but his smile was easy. Max looked up, wary. What did the lawyer say? Sawyer settled near them. It means you'll stay together. That's non-negotiable. But there will be visits, questions, maybe some home checks. Max narrowed his eyes. So they can still take us? Sawyer shook his head. Not without hearings. Not without voices heard, including yours. Leo leaned against his brother. That's good, right? Max didn't answer. His silence was louder than words. That afternoon, Sawyer drove them to the clinic for Leo's prescription. The waiting room was crowded, children coughing into tissues, parents scrolling their phones. Sawyer stayed close, conscious of the stares. Not cruel, just curious. A billionaire in a wheelchair with two boys who clearly weren't his. Leo swung his legs from the chair, sketching on a clipboard. Max sat stiffly beside him, watching everyone. When their name was called, Sawyer wheeled into the exam room with them. Dr. Patel, the pediatrician, reviewed Leo's chart. Asthma under control once we restart the right dosage. No signs of infection. But you'll need consistent follow-up. She wrote the prescription quickly, then looked at Sawyer. You'll handle pharmacy and school forms? Yes, Sawyer said without hesitation. Max frowned. School? Sawyer met his gaze. You deserve it. Friends, books, not just snowstorms and empty lots. Max muttered. Schools don't want kids like us. Sawyer leaned forward, steady. Then we find one that does. Together. The words seemed to land, not fully believed, but not dismissed either. That evening, Morgan stopped by with a folder of documents. She sat at the kitchen table, pen tapping against paper. We'll need your signature here. And here. Sawyer signed steadily. Max hovered nearby, arms crossed. What's she making you do? Morgan looked up, her tone calm. I'm making sure no one takes you without a judge saying so. This is protection, not separation. Max studied her for a long beat before giving a curt nod. Okay. Martha brought in mugs of cocoa for everyone. Legal work goes down smoother with chocolate, she quipped, setting them on the table. Leo giggled softly, sipping his drink. Max allowed the faintest smile, almost hidden. By the time Morgan left, the snow had begun again, flakes swirling under the porch light. Sawyer lingered by the window, watching the boys chase each other down the hall in socked feet, their laughter filling corners of the house that had been empty too long. This wasn't a fairy tale. Paperwork, hearings, and doubt stretched ahead. But for tonight, he knew one thing for certain. They were not alone, and neither was he. The house was still when Dr. Richards arrived. He carried no illusions of miracles, only a worn leather bag and a calm presence Sawyer had once trusted. Good to see you again, the doctor said, wheeling a portable set of parallel bars into the den. You ready to try? Sawyer sat straighter in his chair. Ready or not, it's time. Max and Leo perched on the couch, wide-eyed. Martha hovered nearby with folded towels, her instinct to help barely contained. Dr. Richards set his clipboard aside. We start simple. Core strength, transfers. Then gait training if balance cooperates. Progress will be slow. Sawyer gave a sharp nod. I understand. The boys leaned forward as Sawyer gripped the bars. His arms trembled, shoulders tightening with effort. He managed half a lift, then collapsed back into the chair, sweat already beading. Max whispered, He's trying. Leo clutched his sketchbook, like flying practice. Sawyer exhaled hard, jaw tight. Again. Dr. K. Richards steadied the chair. Slow, Sawyer. Not all at once. Muscles rebuild in inches, not leaps. This time, Sawyer lifted higher, knees quaking. For 3 seconds he held, then sank back down, chest heaving. Leo hopped off the couch and rummaged through his pack. He taped a scrap of paper to the wall above the bars, 2 crooked stars drawn in crayon. You get one every time you try, he declared. Sawyer blinked at him, sweat dripping. A star chart? No, Leo corrected, smiling shyly. A starboard. Even better. Max rolled his eyes, though his voice softened. It's motivation, not magic. Don't push him too hard. Sawyer chuckled weakly, wiping his forehead. Don't worry. I'll earn every star. Over the next hour, he pushed through sets of lifts and balance holds, each attempt leaving him breathless. His hands ached from gripping the bars, his back muscles screamed, but he didn't stop. Every effort earned a new star, blue, red, green, hastily drawn and taped by Leo. The board filled faster than Sawyer expected. By the time Dr. Richards packed up, Sawyer's shirt clung damp with sweat. He slumped into the chair, exhausted but lighter somehow. "You did well," the doctor said firmly. "Setbacks will come. Don't let them define the arc. I'll be back Thursday." Sawyer nodded, grateful. After Richards left, Martha brought water and a clean towel. Max fetched Leo's markers without being asked. The boys hovered close, their presence less like pressure and more like fuel. Sawyer toweled off, glancing at the wall. "Looks like I'm halfway to the moon already." Leo grinned, showing a gap in his teeth. "Next stop, Mars." For the first time in years, Sawyer laughed. Short, rough, but real. Later, as the boys settled into bed, Max lingered at the door. "You don't have to prove anything," he said quietly. "Not to us." Sawyer met his gaze. "Maybe I do, to myself." Max gave a slow nod, then disappeared into the room. Alone in the hallway, Sawyer rolled to the compass on his desk. He opened the lid, watching the needle swing before settling north. He thought of his wife's note, of Leo's stars, of Max's guarded eyes softening bit by bit. Small steps, hard truths, but forward nonetheless. For the first time in a long time, Sawyer felt the direction wasn't just possible, it was chosen. The storm worsened overnight, a thick curtain of snow swallowing the city. Sawyer woke to his phone buzzing with alerts. Martha slid the newspaper onto the kitchen table before he could reach for it. The headline glared up at him. "Tech Mogul Plays Savior to Street Kids in PR Stunt." Max froze mid-bite of cereal, his spoon clattering. "They're writing about us?" Leo's eyes widened. "Are we in trouble?" Sawyer read the article, jaw tightening. The piece framed the boys as pawns, suggesting Sawyer's company wanted sympathy to distract from winter power outages. A grainy photo of them entering his house was splashed across the front page. Martha muttered, "Vultures. They don't know the first thing about those boys." Sawyer folded the paper carefully, resisting the urge to tear it in half. "You're not in trouble," he told the boys firmly. "You've done nothing wrong." Max's face darkened. "Then why does it sound like we're some project?" Sawyer leaned forward, his voice steady. "Because people like easy stories. They don't like complicated truths. But you are not a headline. You're Max and Leo, and you matter." Leo tugged at his sleeve. "Will they take us away?" Sawyer hesitated. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. He answered. "Board's restless," Daniel said. "They saw the paper. Eric's already whispering about liability. They want to know if you're parading kids for image management." Sawyer's tone sharpened. "Tell them no. Tell them privacy is non-negotiable. They won't like it." "They don't have to," Sawyer replied. "Handle the board. I'll handle this." He hung up and found both boys staring at him. He forced a calmer tone. "No one's taking you, not while I still have a say." That afternoon, news crews gathered outside the gates, cameras pointed through swirling snow. Martha closed the curtains tight. "Don't let them rattle you," she said. Sawyer tried to focus on rehab exercises, but his mind kept replaying the article. The boys sensed it. Max grew more guarded, Leo quieter. When Sawyer finally sat back, drenched in sweat, he caught Leo watching him with wide, worried eyes. "Why do they lie?" the boy asked softly. Sawyer sighed. "Because lies are easier than admitting systems fail. It's easier to point fingers than fix what's broken." Max muttered, "Sounds familiar." Before Sawyer could answer, Daniel called again, urgency in his voice. "Ice storm knocked out power at the rural clinic. The one we outfitted with microgrids. Everyone's watching. If it fails, we're ruined." Sawyer straightened, pulse quickening. "And if it holds? Then you'll have proved something real," Daniel said. "But the press won't wait for facts." After the call, Sawyer wheeled into the living room. Max and Leo looked up, expectant. He didn't hide the truth. There's a storm hitting harder up north. A clinic might lose power, but the system we built should hold. Leo bit his lip. If it doesn't? Then people will get hurt, Sawyer admitted. That's why it has to work. Silence fell, broken only by the wind outside. Then Max spoke, voice steady. So, it's not just about us. Sawyer met his gaze. It never was. It's about proving we can protect people when storms hit. People like you, like your mom, like anyone who needs the lights to stay on. Max held his eyes for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Later, as night fell, Sawyer sat in his study. Outside, cameras still blinked red through the snow. Inside, Leo taped another star on the wall above the parallel bars, this one drawn in bold black marker. For when it feels dark, he explained. Sawyer looked at the star, then at the compass on his desk. The storm outside raged, the headlines twisted, but in this house he felt a steady pull forward. By morning, the street outside Sawyer's townhouse was clogged with news vans. Their satellite dishes tilted against the gray sky. Cameras glinted through the falling snow, lenses trained on his front gate. Martha muttered under her breath as she pulled the curtains tight. Like wolves circling. Max paced near the window. They're not going away, are they? No, Sawyer admitted, wheeling into the room. But we don't give them what they want. What do they want? Leo asked, voice small. A story, Sawyer said, calm but firm. Pictures, sound bites, something that makes us look like a headline. They don't get that. His phone buzzed. Daniel again. The board wants a statement, Daniel said flatly. They think silence looks guilty. Sawyer stared at the compass on his desk, the needle quivering north. Then let them think what they want. I'm not putting the boys on display. Daniel exhaled. So, what's your move? Deeds, not posts, Sawyer said. No interviews, no cameras. We keep working. That afternoon, he drafted an emergency fund directive. Millions allocated to shelters and foster drop-in centers, each equipped with portable microgrids to keep heat and lights running through the storm. He labeled it Winter Shield. Martha peeked over his shoulder. You're pouring money into this quietly? Yes. Sawyer signed his name. Steady and final. Anonymous where possible. Impact matters, not credit. The boys listened from the doorway. Max frowned. Why not tell people? Wouldn't that shut them up? Sawyer turned to face him. Because I won't use you to clear my name. Privacy first. Action second. Leo tilted his head. But if people don't know you helped, how will they believe? They'll know when the lights stay on, Sawyer answered softly. That night, Martha made stew, the air rich with herbs. The boys huddled at the table, cheeks warmed by the fire. Max asked careful questions about schools, about what placement really meant. Sawyer answered each one with honesty, even when the answers hurt. After dinner, Leo slipped another drawing onto Sawyer's lap. This one showed a building lit bright against a dark storm, windows glowing like stars. Beneath, a small figure held a compass in one hand. Sawyer swallowed hard. That's good, Leo. Very good. It's you, Leo said simply, keeping the lights on. Before bed, Max lingered at the study door. You really won't talk to the cameras? Sawyer shook his head. No, I won't let them twist you into something you're not. Max hesitated, then said quietly, Most adults. They pick easy over right. Sawyer met his gaze. Then maybe it's time we picked right. Later, alone, he checked the Winter Shield deployment. The first units were already en route, strapped to trucks pushing through icy highways. No one would know his name was behind it, but the thought of a shelter's furnace humming through the night steadied him. In the hall, Leo's new drawing glowed under the lamp. A storm outside, but light within. The compass on his desk clicked softly as he shut it, as if sealing a vow. He whispered to the empty room, Deeds, not posts. For once, the silence answered with peace instead of emptiness. Snow fell heavy again, muffling the city in silence. Inside, The den smelled of pine logs and sweat. Sawyer gripped the parallel bars, knuckles white, jaw locked. Dr. Richards stood nearby, calm as ever. "Slow, Sawyer," the doctor urged. "Don't muscle through pain. Form over force." But Sawyer was tired of slow. He pulled harder, trying to straighten his legs. For one fierce second he rose higher than before, then his knees buckled. The world tilted. The crash echoed. He hit the mat hard, breath knocked out of him. Pain shot through his hip. Max scrambled forward instantly. "Don't move!" His voice cracked with panic. Leo dropped his sketchbook, eyes wide with terror. "He fell, Martha! He fell!" Sawyer clenched his teeth, forcing a breath. "I'm fine." But the word came strangled, unconvincing. Dr. Richards knelt beside him, professional calm masking concern. "We'll check for bruising. No fractures, but you've strained the hip. This is why I said pace yourself." Sawyer covered his eyes with a trembling hand. The frustration hit harder than the fall. He had pushed too fast, chasing progress, and now the boys looked at him like he might break. "I can't do this," he muttered, voice rough. "Not anymore." Martha crouched near, her hand firm on his shoulder. "Yes, you can. One fall doesn't erase weeks of work." Max shook his head, anger flashing. "You're supposed to know better. Why push till you collapse?" Sawyer looked at him, ashamed. "Because I wanted to prove I was more than this chair." Leo's small voice cut the room. "You don't have to prove anything." The silence that followed was raw. Dr. Richards packed his bag quietly. "Take 2 days rest. Then we start over. If you quit now, the fall wins. You choose what defines you." Sawyer said nothing. He stayed on the mat even after everyone drifted back to their routines. Later that night, alone in his study, the compass lay open on the desk. The needle pointed steady north, mocking him. He closed his eyes, hearing his wife's voice from her note. Presence matters more than perfection. He muttered to the empty room, "I'm failing them." A soft scrape interrupted his spiral. Something slid under the door. He wheeled forward, heart pounding, and picked it up. A piece of lined paper, torn from a notebook. Crayon letters scrawled across it. "If you can't today, we'll try again tomorrow." A small star was drawn in the corner. He opened the door. The hallway was empty except for shadows. But he knew. Leo's handwriting, Max's watchful silence, they'd worked together. Sawyer pressed the note to his chest, breath catching. The weight of despair cracked just enough to let something warmer in. When Martha passed by later, she found him back at the parallel bars, the paper taped above the wall of stars. His body trembled, but his eyes burned with resolve. He whispered to the boys' empty room down the hall, "Tomorrow, we try again. Together." And for the first time that day, he believed it. The storm had choked half the state by dawn. Sawyer sat at his desk, the compass open, the boy's note taped above the wall of stars. His phone buzzed. Daniel's number. "The clinic's power line went down overnight," Daniel said, tension sharp in his voice. "Every grid in that county is dark, except the one we outfitted." Sawyer straightened, pulse quickening. "It held?" "It held," Daniel confirmed. "The only lights for miles. Families lined up outside for oxygen, heat, insulin storage. The microgrid saved them." Sawyer closed his eyes, the relief nearly breaking him. For months he had doubted, retreating from progress, from grief. Now the system worked. Not on paper, not in projections, but in the cold teeth of winter. "Send trucks with extra batteries," Sawyer ordered, quietly. "No press." Daniel's voice softened. "Already on it. But word will spread. People will know you did this." Sawyer glanced toward the guest room where Max and Leo slept. "Let them know the lights held. That's enough." Later, during rehab, he gripped the parallel bars again. His hip still ached from the fall, but the note above him burned brighter than pain. "If you can't today, we'll try again tomorrow." This time he lifted carefully, focusing on form. His legs wobbled, but he steadied. 1 second, 2, 3. Then slowly, he released his grip. For a heartbeat, he stood free, unsupported. Leo gasped, clapping his hands. "You did it!" Max's eyes widened. He tried to mask it, but awe slipped through. "You actually did." Sawyer sank back into the chair, chest heaving. Sweat stung his eyes, but his mouth curved into something he hadn't worn in years, a true smile. Dr. Richards nodded firmly. "That's progress. Real, measurable progress. You're not done, but this is proof." Sawyer wiped his brow, still grinning. "Proof enough to keep going." That afternoon, Morgan arrived with new documents. She laid them on the table, her expression tight. I reviewed the boys' file. A contractor listed in their mother's housing record signed off on safety inspections. False ones. The same man cut corners on heating systems for half the city's foster units. Max's fists clenched. "That's why our place was freezing. Mom used to fight with the landlord." Morgan nodded. "Negligence, and worse. I'm filing a formal complaint." Sawyer's jaw hardened. "Make sure it sticks. These boys won't be ghosts in someone else's cover-up." Leo drew silently at the table. When he slid the paper toward Sawyer, it showed a house glowing with steady light, 3 figures inside. Beneath, he'd written in crooked letters, "Power on." Sawyer felt the weight of it, the literal lights that had saved a clinic, the fragile lights inside his own home flickering back to life. He pressed the drawing flat on the table, fingers trembling. Later that evening, as the boys brushed their teeth, Max lingered at the doorway. "You really stood today," he said quietly. Sawyer met his gaze. "I did, but not alone, not anymore." Max hesitated, then gave a small nod. A truce, maybe even the start of trust. When the house settled into sleep, Sawyer wheeled back to his desk. He set Leo's drawing beside the compass. Both pointed in the same direction, forward. For the first time in a long while, he didn't just endure winter, he faced it. Lights on, compass steady, 2 boys walking beside him into whatever came next. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and coffee, a mix of nerves and bureaucracy. Sawyer sat at the table with Morgan beside him, Max and Leo close at his side. The boys fidgeted, their shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The judge entered, a woman with steady eyes and a calm tone. "We're here to finalize guardianship review," she began. "Mr. Hale, I've read your petition." Sawyer kept his voice steady. "I'm asking for permanent placement, stability, therapy, and education, all without publicity. The boys deserve a life, not a headline." Max glanced up, wary. "What if they say no?" he whispered. Sawyer bent low, his voice firm. "Then we fight again, but we don't give up." Morgan presented the file. Medical reports, school liaison notes, the pediatrician's testimony about Sawyer's diligence. Then she handed over Leo's drawings, carefully preserved. "These may not be legal exhibits," she told the court, "but they're evidence of stability. The boys see Mr. Hale as family." The judge studied one page longer than the rest. 3 figures, hand in hand, beneath a compass. Her expression softened. "Mr. Hale, you understand the responsibility?" "I do," Sawyer answered. "Therapy continues. Education is priority. Privacy absolute. Their children first. Everything else comes second." Max stiffened, prepared for disappointment. But the judge's voice was steady. "Given the evidence and the boys' wishes," she glanced at them, "do you both want this placement?" Leo's yes came fast, clear as a bell. Max hesitated, then said, "Only if we stay together." The judge smiled faintly. "Then it's decided. Guardianship granted." Her gavel tapped once, final. Leo let out a breath he'd been holding for weeks. Max sat straighter, still suspicious of the world, but a flicker of relief crossed his face. Sawyer's own chest loosened for the first time since the crash. Afterward, in the hallway, Martha hugged both boys tight. "Told you, grit pays off," she whispered. Morgan packed her briefcase, giving Sawyer a rare smile. Not every case ends this clean. Remember that. Protect it. I will, Sawyer promised. That night, back at the townhouse, the mood was different. The house no longer felt like borrowed shelter. It felt lived in. Drawings lined the hallway, taped proudly by Leo. The drone parts still littered the coffee table, Max tinkering with quiet focus. Martha cooked a celebratory meal, her humming mixing with the boys' laughter. After dinner, Sawyer wheeled into the hallway. He studied the drawings one by one. Snowstorms, houses, stars, compass needles pointing forward. He stopped at the newest sketch. 3 figures walking down a hallway together. Their faces weren't perfect, but the feeling was. "Boys," he called gently. They joined him, Max brushing marker stains from his hands, Leo carrying his sketchbook. Sawyer placed his hand over the drawing. "This is us, but we need rules if we're going to be a family." Max raised an eyebrow. "Rules? School first," Sawyer said firmly. "Therapy for all of us. We keep each other safe, and no media exposure. That's non-negotiable." Leo's face lit with relief. "So, no cameras?" "No cameras," Sawyer confirmed. Max studied him for a long beat, then nodded slowly. "Okay, we can live with that." Sawyer extended his hand. "Then it's official, not just papers, promises." Both boys placed their hands over his. 3 palms stacked, steady, unshaken. For a moment, the silence in the house wasn't empty. It was full of trust, of choices made, of family beginning to root. And as the snow whispered against the windows, Sawyer thought, this isn't rescue, Shatter. This is rebuilding. The storm broke at last. Sun spilled across the city, dazzling against the ice-glazed branches. Sawyer wheeled onto the porch, bundled in a heavy coat, the boys darting past him with scarves flapping like banners. "Race you to the tree line!" Leo shouted, sprinting across the snowy yard. His laughter rang crisp in the cold air. Max followed, steadier but smiling. "Don't trip, dummy." Martha spread a blanket on the porch steps, setting down a basket of sandwiches and cocoa in thermoses. "Picnic in February," she said with a chuckle. "Only you 3 would think of that." Sawyer maneuvered down the ramp, the crunch of his tires in the snow steady and deliberate. When he reached the blanket, the boys flopped down beside him, cheeks red from running. "Cocoa first," Martha insisted, pouring steaming mugs. They drank, the warmth filling their hands, their breath rising in small clouds. Leo pulled out his sketchbook, balanced it on his knees, and began drawing the scene. The blue sky, though the white drifts, 3 figures on a blanket together. Max glanced at Sawyer. "You gonna try again today?" Sawyer set his mug aside. "Yes, today." He wheeled close to the sturdy oak near the yard's edge. With Max bracing one side and Leo hovering with wide eyes, Sawyer positioned himself at the parallel bars Daniel had delivered last week for home practice. The cold air bit at his lungs. His hands gripped the bars. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed upward. His legs quivered, knees uncertain, but this time he steadied. "One step," he murmured. He shifted forward. His hips screamed, but his balance held. 2 steps, Max counted, his voice steady now, less anxious, more proud. Sawyer managed a 3rd, then eased back into the chair, chest heaving, face flushed with triumph. Leo clapped so hard his mitten nearly flew off. "You walked! You really walked!" Sawyer laughed breathlessly. "Not far, but far enough." Max placed a stopwatch in his palm, one he'd dug out from an old junk drawer. "Next time, we time you. See how long you can last." "Deal," Sawyer said, gripping it tight. Back on the blanket, Martha handed out sandwiches, the boys chattering about school they'd start soon, about drones they'd repair, about drawings Leo promised to hang in every hallway. Sawyer leaned back, watching their faces glow in the winter sun. For so long, silence and grief had caged him. Now the house echoed with footsteps, laughter, and plans. He reached into his coat pocket and drew out the brass compass. Its lid clicked open, needle steady north. He placed it between them on the blanket. Leo touched it reverently. So, what direction now? Sawyer smiled, warm and sure. Forward, always forward. The compass lid clicked shut, sealing the promise. Later, when the picnic wound down, Max helped pack the basket while Leo finished his drawing. He held it up proudly. The three of them under the oak, sunlight breaking through snow. At the bottom he'd scrawled one word in bright letters: family. Sawyer took the page gently, his vision blurring at the edges. He folded it with care, tucking it into his pocket beside the others. The napkin from the first night. The compass sketch. The note slid under his door. Symbols of trust, of faith, of second chances. The winter air stung, but it felt like life, not loss. As they wheeled back toward the house, Sawyer thought of his wife's final note. Choose us, always. He glanced at the boys ahead of him, two brothers bound by grit, by love, by belief, and knew he finally had. Together, they stepped into the winter light.